The final key visual of Attack on Titan has finally dropped, featuring the long-awaited cabin scene. Yes, the cabin scene is confusing anime watchers everywhere. Are these Eren and Mikasa shadows? Are they getting married? What is going on? So yeah, let's talk all about the cabin scene. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel after a long break. Last week, Attack on Titan gave us the first sneak preview of the final part of the show, a key visual of a little cabin. This key visual is different from the other ones we had over the years, and if you don't know what is going on, you would have a hard time knowing this is actually from Attack on Titan. It's a very peaceful image compared to what we're used to, and who would have thought the show that started with this will end with that? So let's jump to the cabin key visual and see what's hiding there. These events take place in chapter 138, A Long Dream, so keep in mind there will be spoilers. At first look, it seems there aren't many details behind this cabin, until we look at the ground and see those huge shadows. Congratulations, Eren and Mikasa. No, but seriously, those shadows belong to Armin's Colossal Titan on the right and Eren's Last Titan on the left. So yes, this is Eren's Titan, not Mikasa in a wedding gown. Now, I won't get into why Eren's Titan suddenly changed, because that would be an unnecessary spoiler. But I will just say, those two shadows don't really belong to that specific scene. They don't even belong to that same reality, and you will soon see why. Another detail we see is a little bird flying above the cabin. Unlike the shadows, this bird is 100% related to that scene. Another little addition is that little wall that wasn't featured in the manga. Of course, it's not like the walls we are used to, and this little wall can't protect or oppress people. This is mainly symbolic, to show this place is far away from conflict, to portray a feeling of peace, where you don't need walls for protection. It was a little addition, but I think it was a smart one. Other than that, we also have a little wooden table set for two people. So, who lives there? The answer is Eren and Mikasa, but they are not the Eren and Mikasa you think of. Confused? Great. So now let's understand what is the cabin scene, where does it take place, and what does it got to do with the scene of Mikasa from the first chapter, the same one that was finally animated in the latest episode. I just want to go back home. The cabin scene takes place in an alternate reality. It is not part of the events you are familiar with, where Eren is destroying the world. So what does it got to do with our story? After a long fight with Eren, he takes the form of a colossal-sized titan, while Armin's titan is trying to stop him. While this is happening, Mikasa and Levi are up in the sky with Falco, when Mikasa suddenly starts having one of her headaches. Levi tries to shake her out of it, but all Mikasa says is that she wants to go back home. From there, she suddenly finds herself with Eren in that little cabin. Mikasa is confused. She feels she doesn't belong there. She feels she needs to be somewhere else. That makes sense because she is currently fighting alongside her friends, and suddenly she is here, in this cabin. After a short conversation, we realize that Eren is not like Mikasa. He doesn't know about the events going on in our reality. He only knows the events of his reality. To make things clear, Isayama made sure to show us this is a real place and not the paths. He did that by showing them searching for food and talking about tiredness and time passing by. All of those are not things we see in the paths. Zeke arguably spent years waiting for Eren, but we didn't see him making himself path sandwiches. My point is that in the paths, you don't need to eat, sleep, or worry about being cold. And that makes us understand this place is reality, only not the reality we have been following. As they keep talking, things start to clarify, as Eren reminds her of the time he asked her, "What am I to you?" But here is the difference. In our reality, Mikasa told him he was family. That was moments before they joined the party. But for this Eren, things went differently when we realized Mikasa gave him a different answer, which made them both run away together and try to live the rest of Eren's 4 remaining years in peace. And not only that, we also find out that was Mikasa who suggested it. Unlike this Eren, who doesn't know anything about the events of our story, Mikasa seems to be connected or even synced with other versions of her across different realities. And this is why things look so confusing to her. She is experiencing 2 different sets of memories. They keep talking, and Cabin Eren even mentions the exact time that passed since they ran away together. This is another clear sign of reality, as they can actually tell how much time has passed by, unlike what is going on in the paths. As I mentioned, Eren has only 4 more years to live, and in this reality, he ran away with Mikasa instead of attacking Liberio like our Eren did. And again, it is crucial to understand that it is all because of Mikasa making a different choice, finally revealing her huge impact of this world and other realities. Those Eren and Mikasa are the results of a different choice Mikasa made, and that is one of the final twists of the story, showing Mikasa to be extremely special. This gets more proof in the final chapter, when we realize who was making Mikasa see all those things. If you remember, Eren asked Zeke about Mikasa's headaches, and that is because he himself didn't know what was the cause of them. So yeah, we will get an answer for who was behind that. I won't spoil it for you, but I will just say, it wasn't Eren. And that should be obvious by now because, as we see, he doesn't know the actual cause. And before we move on, there is something extremely important you need to remember. Eren can't use his Titan powers on Mikasa or Levi. He can send them into the paths, and that is because of the connection between all Eldians, but he cannot use his powers to turn them into Titans, erase their memories, or control them. We could actually see this in action when Uri couldn't control Kenny, and that is because the Ackerman's immunity to the Founder's power. So keep that in mind because it is important. Jumping back to the cabin scene, Eren tells Mikasa it was her choice to run away. He carries on saying he couldn't sacrifice Historia, but also couldn't sacrifice all those people. So when Mikasa said they should run away, he decided to put the fight behind them. Eren asks Mikasa to forget about him after he dies. He has 4 more years to live, and he wants her to throw away the scarf he gave her, to be free of his memory and live a happy life. At that point, a bird flies over their heads, and here comes the crazy part, and where my theory comes into play, so keep up. The next panel is again Eren saying the same thing he said 2 panels ago, forget about me. This is here to make you feel this is Eren 4 years later before he dies, but I claim this is a misdirection, and this is actually our Eren and not Eren from the cabin. We will circle back to that in a moment. A major spoiler is coming. From here, we go back to the events of our reality. Mikasa comes back to herself and puts her scarf back on. She refuses to forget Eren, and suddenly she knows exactly where Eren is located, and more things she couldn't know from Cabin Eren. Almost as if they had a separate conversation we didn't get to see. And yes, we are getting there. Mikasa swoops down to the Titan's mouth and finds Eren, and with a gentle smile, she swings her sword towards his neck. We immediately jump to the cabin again and finally hear the famous phrase from chapter 1 of the manga, "See you later, Eren." This was always Cabin Eren and Mikasa's moment. This is their goodbye, as Mikasa cradles Eren's head in her hands, just like in the latest episode. But in our reality, we see a similar scene, with Mikasa holding Eren's severed head and giving him their first and last kiss. This moment was always a Mikasa moment, and it was her vision of a different reality, where she and Eren lived together in peace for 4 years. Almost 3 years ago, I suggested my own theory. While people were talking about AOE, I offered an alternative: Additional Original Content, or AOC. After examining the chapter several times, I noticed all those little details I mentioned before, like Mikasa suddenly knowing where Eren was inside his Titan, and then that weird panel of Eren saying "forget about me" the second time. I mean, read it again, you will see it feels awkward, almost as if this scene didn't belong there. I believe this is the actual final moment of our Eren with Mikasa. Because Cabin Eren may be Eren, but he doesn't have the same memories and experiences of the Eren we have been following. So I offered a theory that Eren and Mikasa had another conversation where he told her all that extra information. And I still believe it will be animated as additional original content in the final part of the show, AOC. That way, it will offer a great explanation and also won't change the outcome or the ending. We also mentioned that Mikasa cannot be affected by his powers, so this missing moment I was talking about had to take place right now, at that moment. It's not a replacement for the cabin scene. The cabin scene doesn't necessarily happen at that specific moment. For all we know, it could have happened years ago in a different reality, and time is not really a factor here because it's a different reality. But the missing moment I was talking about must have taken place at that specific point in time. So what do I think happened? Our Eren took Mikasa at that moment to a little chat in the paths, the one we didn't get to see. That conversation also ended with "forget about me," which I believe is this panel, and Mikasa here is actually responding to our Eren. I didn't mention everything in this video to not spoil too much, but if you want to get the full and scientific explanation of the cabin scene, check out these two videos. Just keep in mind, both videos deal with the final chapter that is connected to this one and offers more information about Mikasa and her unique abilities. So that is the cabin scene and the new key visual explanation. Living peacefully together in a different reality, in a different life. But don't worry, that is not the actual ending of the story, and a lot more is happening in the final chapter and the extra panels. So check out my final chapter review if you are interested, and don't forget to come back here once the episode is out. This will be my final Attack on Titan theory. Thank you so much for joining me today, my Titan-loving friends, and I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you all real soon in my next video. But until then, let me just remind you all to dedicate your hearts to all of humanity, inside and outside the walls.